Hi, everyone. I'm here with Neale Walsch, a special guest to the Conscious Leadership Program. He's joining me to discuss Module 2, Core Consciousness Concepts. Neale Walsch is a modern-day spiritual messenger whose words continue to touch the world in profound ways. With an early interest in religion and a deeply felt connection to spirituality, Neale spent the majority of his life thriving professionally, yet searching for spiritual meaning before experiencing his now famous Conversation with God. The Conversations with God series of books that emerged from those encounters has been translated into 37 languages, touching millions of lives and inspiring important changes in their day-to-day lives. Welcome, Neale, to the Conscious Leadership Masters Program.
Well, thank you, Steve. It's lovely to be here.
Great to have you with us. I'm going to jump right in because there's a good deal of ground that I'd like to cover. These questions I'm going to pose come from Conversations with God, the book series, because this forms the basis for my Core Consciousness Concepts module. Neale, in Conversations with God, Book 1, it says that the highest promise of God proceeds from the highest love. Yet, you cannot perceive of a perfect love, and so a perfect promise is also inconceivable. Failing to believe in any of this means failing to believe in God. For belief in God produces belief in God's greatest gift, unconditional love, and God's greatest promise, unlimited potential. There's a lot to take in here and unpack, isn't there?
Oh, there sure is. And it was, when I received that information in my conversation, Steve, it literally brought me to tears. I can recall the moment, and it almost brought me to tears again just now, listening to it again, because I think, the whole conversation could begin and end with just that. You almost don't need anything more. That could be the sum total of your experience with regard to CWG. It's a very important element and a huge aspect of life as we have come to understand it, thanks to the metaphysical approach that's given to us in the Conversations with God dialogue. Wow, I mean, it's so far. Can you believe? There's a statement that came to me somewhere along the way here in the past several years. How can we begin to experience and express unconditional love for each other if we can't even imagine a God who loves us in that way? So our first giant step is to embrace the grandest notion we ever had about God. Wouldn't it be wonderful if it turned out to be true that God loves us without condition, without limitation of any kind, and that God would never judge us or punish us for anything at all, because God has no reason to judge us or punish us, because we can't hurt or damage God in any way. And in addition to which, we would have to, in order to imagine a judging, punishing God, we would have to think of a God that's separate from us. Because if God is one with us, as God said to me further on in the dialogue, she said to me, would the right hand slap the left, to punish itself? Who would I judge? He said. Who would I judge? And who would I punish? So when we begin to embrace the notion of God as a singular essence, the only thing there is, remember that CWG told us all things are one thing. There's only one thing, and all things are part of the one thing there is. When we begin to embrace that as an absolute reality, all the other thoughts we're talking about here fall in on us automatically and become easily accepted and easily believed. God loves us without condition and without limitation of any kind. What a wonderful, wonderful notion.
Yes, it is, and it's the truth and ultimate reality. And one of the things, Neale, you've shared over the years is that as you're sharing this with audiences, oftentimes somebody in the audience will come back with, "Oh, Neale, that's just too good to be true."
Yeah, which is really funny, because God's answer to that in the dialogue was, if I can't be too good to be true, who can? but in fact, it's just the opposite. God is so good that it's about time we accepted that as the truth. Everything else is a false notion of what we have been taught and told about God, which has nothing to do with ultimate reality. Imagine a thought's coming to me, Steve. Imagine that if you said to your beloved spouse, in my case, I'm married to a wonderful woman. We've been together now for many years. And I can't even imagine how it would feel to me if I looked into her eyes and said, you know, sweetheart, I just love you completely. I totally love you. Have we had some differences along the way? Of course. Have we had some moments that haven't been as smooth as possible? Of course. But have I loved you in spite of it? Indeed, in some ways, because of it? I love you unconditionally, without condition. You are the most beloved person in my life. How would I feel if having said that, my wife looked at me and said, you know what, honey? I'd like to believe that, but I'm not sure that I can. I would be, oh my gosh, what are you telling me? And so, you know, that, in a way, you know, God, although God wouldn't be hurt by that, because we can't hurt or upset God in any way, but she might look at us and say, I promise you it's true. I wouldn't say it to you if it wasn't.
Beautiful. Yeah. Thank you for that, Neale. Okay, so Conversations with God says repeatedly that we are all one throughout the 10-book series, and goes on to say that there's no separation between the divine, between anyone or anything. Can you talk about this, and is there a metaphor that you like to use that really brings this home?
Well, yes, I often use a metaphor of a wave on the surface of the ocean. I was given that wonderful metaphor by God in my conversation, because I had to frankly admit, you know, my conversation with God was a very practical conversation, a very real exchange between two friends. So I said to God, you know, I'm here and you tell me that we're all one. But by golly, it really stretches me to hold the notion that there's no separation between us, that, you know, that you and I really are all one. And God said to me, okay, let me give you a little metaphor that might help you with that. She said, imagine that you are a wave on the surface of the ocean. If you were that wave, expressing beautifully, expressing majestically, expressing wonderfully, and expressing powerfully as an ocean wave can be, very powerful expression. But is the ocean wave separate in any way from the ocean itself? Is it in any way other than the ocean? Or is it merely an uprising expression, rising from the ocean and expressing as the ocean in a particular way? I said, well, yes, that's exactly what it is. And so he said to me, all right, and then what happens when that expression is full and complete? I said, well, then the wave recedes back into the ocean. And God said, precisely. Now you understand all you need to know. You are a wave on the ocean of God. So go out there and make waves.
Amen. And that's what we're doing here in this Conscious Leadership Masters program, aren't we? Thank you, Neale. The perfect invitation here. So Conversations with God says, it says, begin by being still. Quiet the outer world so that the inner world might bring you insight. This is all a quote straight from Conversations with God. It says, this insight is what you seek. And then it says, and remember to come from within as you deal with the outside world. It goes on to say, if you don't go within, you go without. Can you talk a little bit about these things?
I think that it's one of the aspects of my relationship with the divine that I paid the least amount of attention to during the largest portion of my life. It didn't even occur to me, really. I mean, of course I heard about being quiet with yourself and meditation and going within and all these ideas. Excuse me, but it never was a practical, functional process in my life until I was 50 or 55 years old, when I began to realize, you know, I must be missing something. I'm now hearing this from the highest source. What would it be like for me to do that? So I gave it a try. I thought I'll try meditating, you know, and I tried, you know, the long form of meditation, and it didn't work for me. Frankly, I'm too impatient as a person to sit there for 30 minutes, much less 60 minutes. And I know that some people do that, not denigrating that process, but for me, it was just with my mindset very difficult for me to do. So I thought, well, there must be another way. God said, I can give you at least 3 other ways to meditate. And I'm going to share those 3 with you. You're going to love this. One, it's what we call seeing meditation, where everything you see becomes a meditation. When you're doing the dishes, just watch the water, stop for a minute, and concentrate on the water coming out of the faucet, landing on the dish. Watch your hand. Maybe you've got a little scrubby in your hand and you're scrubbing off a dish. Just simply watch the process and watch it as if it were in slow motion. It's not in slow motion, but imagine that it is in slow motion and become part of the moment, part of the experience at a deeper level than you may ever have been part of that moment before. Go outside and do the same thing with a tree. Maybe there's a tree in your backyard or on the street outside where you live. Touch the tree for just a moment. Just let yourself have a tactile experience of the tree itself and be there with that tree for just a moment. This is called walking meditation, where you can walk through town and simply touch things and see things and look at things in a way you may never have looked at them before, with a deeper level of awareness, a deeper level of insight, a deeper level of understanding of what you're looking at. And then I was given the opportunity to say these magic words: I am that. I am that. Look at the tree. I am that. Look at the water coming out of the faucet at the sink. I am that. It's amazing what a blessed event. Washing the dishes, cleaning up a little bit after dinner. It's amazing what a blessed event that can be when you pay attention. Pay attention to exactly what's happening and the part you're playing. Nothing that is observed is unaffected by the observer. And the way you observe something blesses it. And then the third thing that I offer is a 10-second meditation, what I call a stopping meditation, where you just stop for 10 seconds, 6 times a day. It's 60 seconds a day, 1 minute a day, in 10-second intervals. I do it like usually 3 times before noon and 3 times after noon. You just stop in the middle of whatever you're doing, sometimes in the middle of a sentence, and you allow yourself to just be quiet with yourself for 10 blessed seconds. Stop all the noise. Stop all the thinking. Just let yourself be with the moment itself, to just experience life with nothing else going on except life itself for 10 seconds, 6 times a day. Those are some ways that we can be with the divine. Those are some ways that we can make that connection and allow it to be more real in our practical day-to-day experience, as I have observed it in my own life.
Beautiful. Wow. Thank you for taking that moment there too, Neale. That was beautiful, and bringing in these other ways of just creating stillness and going within. Conversations with God talks about the law of cause and effect. It says that there's nothing you cannot have if you choose it, that your life proceeds out of your intention for it. It says you have more power than you think, that most powerful creating comes when you unite body, mind, and spirit. Some might say that this is pie in the sky, and this is actually part of your conversation, but can you talk about this, Neale?
Well, I have to observe that this series of books, Conversations with God, is not the only source from which this idea might arise or present itself in your life. Norman Vincent Peale, Reverend Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, wrote an astonishing book in 1947, The Power of Positive Thinking, and many others as well. Emile Coué, back in the First World War, a French a pharmacist, actually. He was a French pharmacist, and he was working with the French army in the First World War. He came up with the same notion that he told the soldiers that he was treating in the field. He was healing them, the wounded soldiers, of course. And he would give to a certain section of them an opportunity to practice intention thinking. Every day, in every way, I'm feeling better and better. And so one group he instructed to say that 100 times. The other group he didn't give that exercise to. He just wanted to run a test once. He ran that test once. What do you think happened? Well, we already know what happened. The group that said 100 times a day to themselves, every day in every way I'm feeling better and better, in fact got better and better very, very quickly. They were using what's known as the power of metaphysics. So we are told that, in fact, this is an extraordinary opportunity that we have. We don't really know who we really are. All of life is energy. We're all involved with energetics. And when we use that energy, as a participant in the creation of it. Did you hear what I said? When we use that energy as a participant in the creation of it, we begin a process of energy exchange, synergistic energy exchange with all the energy that's surrounding us. And that produces the opportunity to create extraordinary outcomes. Now, I'm not suggesting that everything you think about is going to happen, but does it begin to set up an energetic process by which its possibility becomes much larger and much greater than ever before? That much I can promise you is true, and my own life has been a demonstration of it.
Wonderful. Yeah, thank you, Neale. And nice bringing in these other examples, as you mentioned. It's really it's timeless wisdom. So Conversations with God invites people to a be, do, have paradigm, but says that most people reverse this. Can you discuss that?
Yeah. The be, do, have paradigm is a brand new way of moving through the world. When I was a child, I was told by my father many, many times, in order to get anything accomplished in your life, you have to have what you need to have. You got to have the right stuff. Then you have to do what it takes in order to be what you want to be. You want to be successful. You want to be secure. You want to be happy. Whatever it is you want to be, you have to have the right. You got to have. And the example he gave me, Steve, was because he was very frustrated because I was not performing in college the way he thought I should. He said, "Neale, you got a lot of intelligence. You got a lot of. You're really a smart guy. You're a smart kid." He said, get out there, and when you have good grades, then you can do the thing called be job worthy. That is, occupation worthy. You have good grades, you can do the thing called graduate from college, which you're not going to do the way you're doing this right now, Neale. You can do the thing called graduate, and then you can be ready to apply for the job that you'd like to have. Then you can be the thing called successful. So he taught me in many ways, not just with regard to work. Have, do, be formula. Well, I said to God, I've tried that, and it works to a limited degree. But in my life, what I'm trying to be happy, trying to be successful, trying to be secure, all those things I was trying to be. Those beingness states, I would call it, were ephemeral. They would slip through my fingers like so much sand is slipping through my fingers. How can I hang on to that level of beingness? And God said, reverse the process. What you were trying to be was the end of your process in the way you were taught, but really make that the beginning of your process. Start with being and decide to be successful, decide to be secure, decide to be happy, decide to be safe, decide to be creative, whatever it is you want to be, make a decision to be that and make a declaration, I am that. I am that, without any evidence to justify it. It's a matter of pure faith. I declare that I am creative, I am successful, I am happy, I am secure, whatever state of being you want. Then you'll start doing whatever you're doing as an outgrowth of that state of being. That is, you will do what you're doing as a demonstration of who you've announced yourself to be, not as an attempt to get to be that, but as a demonstration that you are already that. Then you will have all the things that a person who is being those things usually has. So he changed around for me the entire formula. Now it's called the be, do, have paradigm. Try it. It's shockingly powerful.
Yes, it is. And also, I love in Conversations with God, it often shares that at the end of our life, it's only what we've been that counts, and we're not the doing.
Utterly irrelevant. The soul, when you end your life, the soul doesn't really care about those things, but it does care about, just as you said, Steve, what have you been in your life? And what are you being right now, even at the moment of your death?
Yeah, boy, and let's just on that, wow, let's stop on that one, because that's one to really take in fully. What are we being right now? Because it's everything, on a moment-to-moment basis. It's everything. This whole within, and which affects our being state is really everything. So Neale, let me another big paradigm coming in from Conversations with God. It talks about the evolution of the soul, and it talks about how before our life we're in this knowing state, and then when we embody, we come into this experiencing state, and then at the end of our life we go into a being state. So can you share a little bit about how this works?
Well, you've just described it really. When we're in the, I was told, God invited me to just create a triangle, just to picture a triangle in my mind. At the top of the triangle, place a notion called pure being. At one end of the triangle, place a notion called spirituality, or the spiritual realm, if you please. At the other corner of the triangle, allow yourself to imagine a realm called the realm of the physical. What God said is that we're moving from the realm of the spiritual to the realm of the physical, then up to the realm of pure being, down once again to the realm of the spiritual, across to the realm of the physical, up once again to the realm of pure being, in a never-ending, happily, by the way, in an eternally, joyfully happy process, never-ending process of being and then knowing and then experiencing, being and knowing and experiencing. So what I was told in conversations with God is that in the realm of the spiritual, all things are true at all times. There is no such thing as time. There's no such thing as the time and space are all occurring in one singular expression of life. So it is always here, it is always now, and all there is love. So it's love here and now, love here and now, love here and now, always, which is all very lovely, except that we can't express it. We simply know that that's what's true. But as divine beings, we choose to do more than simply know that something's true. We wish to experience it. In order to experience it, we move to this is a metaphor, of course, we move to the realm of the physical, where things other than the absolute exist, where there's up and down, left and right, here and there, before and after, fast and slow, big and small, and yes, what we call evil and what we call good. And in the space of that which we are not, that which we are becomes suddenly experienceable. We can experience what we are because we are suddenly finding ourselves in a contrasting element, a contextual field, where that which we are not exists. To give you a real fast, simple example, if I say I am the light, I can know myself as the light. I can conceptualize myself. I am the light, I am the light. But I can't really express or experience myself as the light unless I'm finding myself in a space called the darkness. When the darkness appears, then I can actually express as the light. Be a light unto the darkness, that you might know who you really are. But don't condemn the darkness. Judge not and neither condemn, but embrace the darkness as part of the gift that allows you to be who you really are. That, in brief, is an explanation of a very sophisticated understanding that we have been given in the Conversations with God dialogue.
Yeah, wow, beautiful. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for bringing in those practical examples, Neale. So in today's world, with this nationalist populist thing and climate change, et cetera, so many things going on, there's a big focus on creating peace. And there was the 5 steps to peace was one of the really important paradigms that came through the Conversations with God material, including that 5th step where it talks about living as our highest and grandest self rather than in denial of that. Can you talk a little bit about this?
Well, you're saying it perfectly, and I'm going to invite you to actually take a minute and share with our audience those 5 steps to peace, so that they can really hear in individual statements what the 5 steps are.
Yes, let me do that. So give me 1 second. This is literally only going to take me 1 second.
Yeah. See, and what I want you to know is that these are the steps that we have been given by God in the Conversations with God that help us get from where we are to where we want to be with regard to the notion of peace.
Yes, and so this is the 5 steps to peace, and it shares this what we're all after, which is to live in this everlasting state of peace, that we can actually do that through this simple process. So here are the 5 steps to peace that come from Conversations with God. Step 1. I acknowledge that some of my old beliefs about God and about life are no longer working. Step 2, I acknowledge that there is something I do not understand about God and about life, the understanding of which could change everything. Step 3, I am willing for new understandings of God and life to now be brought forth, understandings that could produce a new way of life on this planet. Step 4, I am willing to explore and examine these new understandings, and if they align with my inner truth and knowing, to enlarge my belief system to include them. And then finally, step 5, I am willing to live my life as a demonstration of my highest and grandest beliefs rather than as a denial of them.
See, these are very powerful steps, my friends. Step 3 is very powerful. We have to be willing to have new ideas, new understandings to now be brought forth. And that's where many people, many groups, many organizations fall short in my observation, because they're simply not willing to consider. And by the way, we're not just talking about spiritual beliefs, political beliefs, economic beliefs, social beliefs, with the relationship between races, religions, other political parties. It's not just about spirituality, but of course, all of it is spirituality in the largest sense. So if you're not willing for new ideas to now be brought forth, you're never going to be able to find peace in your life, much less on this planet. We have to realize, wait a minute. We've been trying for now how many thousands of years? Have we been trying to create a peaceful world? We all want peace. Nobody really gets up in the morning and deliberately wants unpeaceful behavior. We don't want terrorism. We don't want killing. We don't want even verbal violence. We don't want any of that. Nobody is yearning for that. And yet the problem is how to get it to that place. How to get to that place where we can manifest peace in our lives. And the beginnings of the process is to be willing for new ideas to now be brought forth. We have to say to ourselves, just a minute. Is it possible that there's something we don't fully understand here about God, about life, about ourselves, about all of it? Is it possible, just possible, that there's something we don't fully understand here, the understanding of which would change everything? That's a huge step for us to be humble enough and willing enough to say, you know what, that's possible. Maybe new data could be brought forth that could change everything. And this is our opportunity right now at this point in our evolutionary process here on the earth. Because if somebody doesn't stand up and say, wait a minute, this can't be the way it's supposed to be. There's got to be something we don't know. There's some data missing. There's something that we don't fully understand, the understanding of which would change it all. If somebody doesn't step forward and allow as to how that's true, we're going to continue walking in the direction we've been walking, and it's not leading us to where we say we want to go.
Amen to that. And it's a simple process, and it works. This 5 Steps to Peace has been around now for, 15 years. So it works. Okay, in your final Conversations with God book, Awaken the Species, that humanity is invited to this third invitation. Can you talk about this third invitation, Awakening the Species, Neale?
Yeah, in the first several books, I was given invitations from God, and invitation is not just meant for me, but meant for all of humanity, meant only for me to share with others. And the 2 invitations that I received in those early dialogues were, number 1, change the world's mind about God. God is not who and what we think that God is, so change the world's mind about God. Number 2, give people back to themselves. That is, interact with each other in such a way that each person whose life you touch is returned to their highest notion of who they really are. Then, and I thought really, frankly, that was the beginning and the end of the conversation. Then a new dialogue arose about 2 or 2.5 years ago in what became Conversations with God, Book 4. It's called Book 4 because it's the 4th book titled Conversations with God. Conversations with God, Book 4, it said, we have one more invitation, and now is the time to share it with you. It wasn't the time earlier, but now is the time because of the way things are occurring on the earth. I said, okay, what's the third invitation? And the third invitation was awaken the species. And I said, oh my gosh, that's not too big of a task. God said, well, it really isn't too big of a task given who you are, that you are an aspect and an individuation of divinity. So I said, okay, how do I do that? How in the world can I join with others? And I assume this invitation is meant for all of us. God said, yes, indeed. Meant for all of you to awaken the species. And so she gave us an opportunity to do just that by helping us to understand what it would take and how species in the universe, and there are other species in the cosmos, highly evolved beings, how they have done that, how they've awakened themselves, and how they are now working, in fact, to awaken us. And we were given a list of 16 differences between highly evolved beings and beings, human beings who are still walking around in kind of a haze, kind of an unawakened state, almost like sleepwalking. And I don't have time here to give you that whole list of 16, but I can tell you it's really powerful reading to pick up book 4 of Conversations with God and read that list of 16 differences between those of us who are moving, those human beings who are moving through life as highly evolved entities and those who are not. I can tell you the first one. First one is very simple. We highly evolved beings understand and live into the unity of all of life. That is, they see themselves as one with everything and everyone else. And so they treat everyone else the way you would treat yourself. They treat everyone else as if they were interacting with themselves in another form, simply existing and expressing life in another form. That one principle alone, forget about the other 15. That what God said to me, you know, that's all you really need to know. That one simple principle would change everything on the planet, change your global experience virtually overnight. So the question is, what would it take for us to convince, that is, for the world to embrace a notion that we are all one? And the answer to that is you. What it would take is you, each of you individually, acting as if that were true. If that were true for you, in what way would your daily interactions with others differ? Maybe you might say, oh, they wouldn't be different at all. Fair enough. But if you think on it closely and deeply, as I have done, I have noticed my own behaviors toward my beloved family, my friends, even total strangers on the street. My whole interaction with humanity has shifted because I've embraced the notion, wait a minute, we are all one. That homeless person sitting there on the sidewalk with a bottle of 4 Roses in a brown paper bag, you know, because he doesn't know how else to survive. What if he and I were one? What if I didn't have any judgment about him, any notion whatsoever, except there I go again. There I go again being that. There I go again being heroic. There I go again being not so nice. There I go again. And if I reacted with a clarity and a deep understanding that there's nobody else out there but me in another form, wow, can that change your idea about life and your behaviors overnight? That much I can promise you. And you're not going to get there all at once. Don't start beating yourself up because you don't feel that you're quite there 30 minutes after you make that decision. But if you begin living that way, and if everyone did, we would in fact awaken the species, because humanity would see what it's like to live life in a totally different way.
Yes, they would. And this is, of course, all what this Conscious Leadership Masters program is about. Beautiful. So thank you for stepping through that.
And when we talk about, excuse me, Steve, when we talk about conscious leadership, understand what leadership means. Leaders aren't people who say, follow me, I'm the one, follow me. That's not what leadership is. Leaders are not the ones who say, follow me. Leaders are the ones who say, I'll go first.
Yes, indeed they do. It's something actually we talk quite a bit about in this Conscious Leadership program. One of the questions that's often asked is, well, this program is just for leaders, right? And yes, but we're all leaders. We're all leaders. We're all invited to go first, and we're certainly none of us asking anybody to follow us. So it's really in consciousness, leadership has a whole new definition of meaning. So.
And be careful, my friends, because if you say to yourself, I'll go first, I'll be one of those who chooses to go first, it will change the course and direction of your life. Your daily priorities will change. Your daily expressions will change. Your daily ways of being will change. I promise you, this is not a small decision. So if you make the huge decision to go first, to be a true leader, then we're talking about awakening the species by creating a way of moving through the world that other people see and want to imitate. I want to share this with you. In book 4, I was told that imitation will replace mutation as a process of adaptation. In the old days, the only way we could adapt our behaviors was through mutation. We would pass along from one generation to the next generation by means of cellular information transfer. We learned how to survive on this planet, how to dress in cold weather, how to behave under certain conditions, what kinds of things to eat and what kinds of things not to eat. We learned what was poisonous plants, and all those things happened because of our experience, and the information was passed along. But the pass along process was agonizingly slow. We literally mutated from one generation to the next to get to where we are today. But now, imitation can replace mutation in the process of adaptation. If we begin to act as in ways that announce to others how extraordinary human beings can really be with each other, people will see that. The idea of will go viral. Ah, this is a new way of being human. That's what's meant by awakening the species. And you can join in that process. That's what humanity's team is up to. That's why humanity's team exists, to create a team of human beings that are all on the same side.
Yes, it does. Yes, and all of us in this Conscious Leadership Masters program, as we go out into the world, thank you, Neale. Beautiful. And this is why we're here. This is what we're up to. Beautiful. So Neale, here we're reaching the end of this guest program. So are any final calls to action to?
Well, I want to share a final thought if I may, Steve, because people have asked me through the years many, many times, if there was one message above all others that is the most important message in the Conversations with God material, and we're talking about over many, many thousands of pages, almost 3,000 pages of material in 9 wonderful books. But if there was one message that you could say was the most powerful or the most meaningful message of all, what would it be? And I can tell you the answer, it always comes up for me in the same way, because it's the single notion that Conversations with God has given me. I ask God in the dialogue, why isn't my life working? What does it take to make life work? Tell me the rules. Just explain it to me. I promise I'll do my best, but I have to get a sense that I want to tell me the rules. Tell me how it works. God says, it's really very simple, Neale. It's quite easy. You think your life is about you, and your life has nothing to do with you. It's about everyone whose life you touch and the way in which you touch it. But the extraordinary thing about that is when you begin to understand that and act that way, you discover that life really is about you in the grandest sense. It's about big you with a capital Y. It's about universal you, because what you do with and for others, you do, of course, with and for yourself, because there really is only one of us. So in that broad, huge way, life is about you, but in the individualized way that we live our lives, life starts off as being about another. What you offer to another, you offer to yourself. So I learned that, oh, I see, my life is not about me, it's about everyone whose life I touch, and the way in which I touch it. And brother, can that change the way you move through the world? Almost overnight.
Yeah, we've come full circle, because when we talk about being state, is there any more beautiful or powerful being state than that, where it's all about those whose lives we touch living as our larger self. What a great place to leave it here, Neale. Really, namaste, brother.